everyone. Welcome to Pikeville History Moments, where we talk about the history and heritage of Pikeville, Kentucky, and the surrounding area. William Shakespeare told us about Romeo and Juliet falling in love despite their families being sworn enemies. That love affair ended with the couple lying dead on the floor. But the tragedy gave their families a new perspective and they ended their feud. Today, in honor of Valentine's Day, we'll tell the story of another pair of star-crossed lovers. This couple was born on opposite sides of the famous feud between the Hatfields and the McCoys. Though they have been called the Mountain Romeo and Juliet, Johnse and Roseanna's story differs from the older version in a few important ways. But we'll get to that at the end. Roseanna was the 9th of 16 children born to Randall and Sally McCoy. Johnse was 3 years younger than Roseanna, but was the oldest of Anderson and Levacy Hatfield's 13 children. The story traditionally starts on an election day held in 1880 at Jerry Hatfield's home on Blackberry Creek. Election days at that time were often festival-like, with family, neighbors, and friends gathering to eat, drink, and socialize for hours on end. Some have said that Johnse and Roseanna met that day, but they almost certainly knew one another. But now Johnse was 18 years old. He had a reputation as a ladies' man and had joined his father's business operations. All writers agree that they had a mutual attraction. Though Randall warned her against mixing with the Hatfields, it's said that Johnse and Roseanna wandered off to a secluded spot and spent the day together. By the time they got back to the election grounds, nearly everyone had left. That included Talbot McCoy, her elder brother, who had been her ride. Faced with the thought of walking home alone, in the dark, over a mountain, or showing up at home with one of the hated Hatfields, her fear overcame good sense. Johnse convinced her to go to his father's home across the Tug Fork. It's doubtful that they were happy to see her, but the Hatfields received her with warmth and hospitality. Aunts sent her home the next morning riding on the back of Johnse's horse, but they met her father and brothers on the way. When Randall saw her, he told her that she was no longer welcome at home and that she was no longer a real McCoy. So the young couple returned to the Hatfield home. Later, when Johnse brought up marriage, devil aunts wouldn't allow it. Roseanna lived in the Hatfield home for a short time, and when she returned to her parents' home, she was carrying Johnse's child. Sources disagree on what prompted Roseanna's departure. It could have been that the Hatfields decided it was time for her to go, or it's possible that Roseanna left because Johnse was spending time with other women. Either way, Roseanna didn't feel welcome back at home. Randall's issue wasn't only shame at her pregnancy, but rather a sense of betrayal at her taking up with the enemy. Roseanna's discomfort soon led to her moving in with her aunt, Betty McCoy, a little farther down the Tug. While she stayed at Aunt Betty's, Johnse would visit Roseanna despite his continued pursuit of other women. During one of these visits, in early fall of 1880, the young couple were set upon by Roseanna's brothers, Bud and Talbot, a Pike County deputy. The McCoys arrested Johnse on an outstanding warrant and said they would take him to Pikeville to stand trial. They rode off, leaving Roseanna alone. But Roseanna feared that her brothers intended to kill Johnse, so she frantically rode a borrowed horse through the night to tell Devil Aunts Hatfield about Johnse's capture. The Hatfields assembled a crew and took shortcuts through the mountains in pursuit. They overcame the McCoys, who found themselves surrounded and outgunned. Johnse was released to his father without a shot being fired. Tolbert would later testify that the Hatfields took them captive and cursed and insulted them, but he reported no violence. Legend has it that devil ants made the men get on their knees to pray at gunpoint. Supposedly, all of them did, except for Jim McCoy, who some versions say had joined his brothers. Jim stood tall and dared devil ants to shoot. This version says that his courage won Jim respect in Hatfield's eyes and that they marked him as a man to be reckoned with. It is said that Randall never forgave Roseanna for warning the Hatfields about Johnse's capture. Some Hatfield traditions have it that Devil Ants was grateful for her actions and came to regret not allowing the couple to marry. But after his rescue, Johnse left Roseanna alone. Whether this was due to orders from his father or out of fear that the McCoys meant to kill him is unknown. Later that same winter, Roseanna gave birth to a baby named Sarah Elizabeth. Little Sarah didn't live long though, and it was commonly said that she died of measles as an infant. Johnse married Roseanna's cousin Nancy on May 14th of 1881, perhaps shortly after the birth of his daughter. Nancy tried to settle him down, but finally divorced him due to his wandering. He would marry 3 more times before his death in 1922. Johnse spent over 10 years on the run from the law after the attack on the McCoy cabin. He then served 6 years of a life sentence before being pardoned. You can go back and watch our video on the raid of the McCoy cabin for more details of that event. Roseanna never married, and she spent the rest of her life living with various relatives, even though she must have had suitors. She briefly lived with her parents in Pikeville, nursing the injuries Sally sustained in the Hatfield attack on their home. When Roseanna left the last time before her death, she is said to have told her mother why she was leaving. According to Truda McCoy, in her book on the McCoys, Roseanna said, "It was Paul. Every time Paul looked at me, I couldn't stand the hate in his eyes." Some say it was around the time of her 30th birthday. It is said that she died of a broken heart, having never forgiven herself for the pain she believed she had caused her family. She's buried at Dill's Cemetery beside her parents. A story from around this time begins with Roseanna attending a service in the little church near her mother's home in Pikeville. A traveling preacher saw her in the audience and asked her why she looked so down. She replied that she had caused a lot of trouble in her life. He responded saying that because she had been saved, she should hold her head high as a forgiven daughter of the Most High King. He further chided the others in attendance by saying the only people that should be ashamed were all those who looked down their noses at her. This beautiful old church still stands today, just a block from the McCoy home on Scott Avenue. So, in what important ways were Johnse and Roseanna's story different from Romeo and Juliet's? For that, we need to think back to Johnse's capture at the hands of Roseanna's brothers. It's said that her brothers took more offense at the affair than anyone save, perhaps her father. And some say that Tolbert got himself appointed as a deputy just to have the chance to get back at Johnse. Instead, Devil Ants rescued Johnse and took the time to humiliate Tolbert and his brothers. By Election Day of 1882, Tolbert McCoy had managed to find still more grievances against the Hatfields. He was said to have a short fuse anyway, so it's not surprising that, before the end of the day, Tolbert had started a drunken fight and that 2 of his brothers would join in. That fight would end with one of his brothers repeatedly stabbing Ellison Hatfield, the brother of Devil Anse, and with another brother firing a bullet into the wounded man's back. When Ellison died of those wounds a few days later, a feud that had been simmering began to boil. So, while Romeo and Juliet died while their love ran hot, Johnse and Roseanna lived many years after their affair had ended. And whereas Romeo and Juliet's deaths ended the war between the Montagues and the Capulets, Johnse and Roseanna's romance was, perhaps, another catalyst for the feud. It may have put in motion events that resulted in many deaths and with their families becoming infamous. Thank you for watching Pikeville History Moments. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit like and subscribe, or click on the link to our website at visitpikeville.com. If you're in the area, be sure to visit the Forbidden Mural depicting Johnse and Roseanna located on 2nd Street in downtown Pikeville. Try out the #Appalachia app to view it in augmented reality.